Have you ever been looked down on simply because of who you are? Have you ever felt rejected by society because of prejudice? Have you ever reached a point where discouragement almost broke you? Jack Johnson knew that pain all too well. Born to parents who had endured bondage, forced into brutal winner-take-all exhibitions just to survive, and avoided by top champions of the era who refused to face him, his path seemed impossible. Yet instead of surrendering, Johnson turned adversity into determination, rising to become the first African-American heavyweight champion in history. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the most unforgettable stories of boxing's greatest legends. On December 26, 1908, in Sydney, Australia, Jack Johnson entered the ring against Tommy Burns, the reigning heavyweight champion. The atmosphere was tense, as many doubted whether Johnson could truly rise to the sport's greatest stage. From the opening rounds, he proved his superiority. His jab was sharp, his counters precise, and his defense impenetrable. Burns, despite his courage, was unable to mount an effective challenge. Johnson's composure never wavered, and by the 14th round, the referee had seen enough. The fight was stopped, and Johnson was declared the new heavyweight champion of the world. That victory did more than prove Johnson's skill. It gave him a platform to voice a powerful message. No one's background should ever define a person's worth. He often called for an end to unfair treatment, not only in sports but in every aspect of life, insisting that true recognition must come from talent and character alone. That night in Sydney was historic, but it was only the beginning. 18 months later, Johnson would take part in the fight that defined his legacy, the fight of the century. On July 4, 1910, in Reno, Nevada, he faced James J. Jeffries, a former champion who had retired undefeated. Jeffries was persuaded to return to the ring under enormous public pressure and the promise of a record purse. He trained for months, losing more than 100 pounds to prepare himself for the contest. The anticipation was unlike anything boxing had ever seen. When the two men finally met, Johnson displayed the same calm dominance he had shown against Burns. He controlled the range with his jab, tied Jeffries up in close quarters, and landed counters that steadily drained his opponent's strength. Round after round, Johnson dictated the pace. By the 15th round, Jeffries could no longer withstand the pressure. For the first time in his career, he was knocked down. His corner, unwilling to see him suffer further, threw in the towel. Johnson's hand was raised once again, and the image of Jeffries, unable to continue, sent shockwaves throughout the sporting world. The meaning of that victory extended far beyond the ring. For boxing fans, it was proof that Johnson was not only a champion, but a master craftsman capable of defeating even the most celebrated challengers. His composure under pressure, his mastery of distance, and his ability to outthink his rivals were on full display. The fight of the century was not just a contest, it was a spectacle that changed perceptions of what greatness in the heavyweight division looked like. Another key defense came on June 27, 1914, when Johnson fought Frank Moran in Paris. This bout stretched over 20 rounds, testing the endurance and patience of both men. Johnson's superior technique was clear throughout. He used his jab to control the rhythm, slipped punches with ease, and neutralized Moran's attempts to mount a serious attack. At the final bell, the decision was obvious. Johnson had retained his title for the 8th time. Winning abroad, under unfamiliar conditions, reinforced his reputation as a champion who could prevail anywhere in the world. These fights, Burns in Sydney, Jeffries in Reno, Moran in Paris, tell the story of a reign built on skill, resilience, and control. Johnson did not simply overpower opponents, he dismantled them with strategy. He smiled as he boxed, spoke as he defended, and kept his composure no matter the circumstances. In doing so, he elevated the craft of boxing itself. Johnson's reign was also remarkable for the financial and cultural impact it created. His purse for the Jeffries fight was around $65,000, an unprecedented figure for the time, equivalent to millions today. The fight was filmed and shown in theaters, bringing in significant revenue and giving audiences around the world the chance to witness history. The success of these films underscored how boxing was becoming not only a sport, but a global business. Outside the ring, Johnson was equally ambitious. In 1912, he opened the Café de Champion in Chicago, a luxurious club that drew diverse crowds. Later in 1920, he established Club Deluxe in Harlem. Though he eventually sold it, the venue was renamed the Cotton Club and went on to become one of the most famous entertainment spots of the Jazz Age. These ventures showed Johnson's entrepreneurial spirit. He was not content to be only an athlete. He wanted to be a businessman and cultural figure as well. By investing his earnings in enterprises that created opportunities for performers and employees, he left a mark beyond boxing. Johnson also used his fame to support broader causes. During World War II, long after his prime, he stepped back into the ring for exhibitions that promoted war bonds. These events were not about personal glory, but about contributing to national efforts. His willingness to give his time and energy in later years demonstrated his sense of responsibility and his connection to the public. His influence even reached into the arts. In 1971, jazz legend Miles Davis released an album titled A Tribute to Jack Johnson, capturing the fighter's rebellious spirit in music. Playwrights and filmmakers revisited his story, ensuring that his name remained alive long after his career ended. Each retelling, whether in music, theater, or film, reinforced the idea that Johnson was more than a boxer. He was an icon whose story resonated across generations. Perhaps the most enduring part of his legacy is how he inspired fighters who came after him. Muhammad Ali often spoke of Johnson as a model. Ali admired the way Johnson combined skill with personality, how he used his mind as much as his fists. Johnson demonstrated that being a champion required more than physical power. It required confidence, strategy, and the ability to rise above pressure. That lesson echoed in the careers of future champions who saw themselves not just as fighters, but as figures who could shape the world around them. Jack Johnson's transformation into a world-class boxer began in an unlikely place, a jail cell. After his fight with Joe Choinski in 1901, both men were arrested because prize fighting was illegal in Texas. During their weeks behind bars, Choinski taught Johnson how to defend himself with subtle movements, parries, and counterpunches. It was in that confinement that Johnson first realized boxing was not just about brute force, it was about intelligence and patience. From that point forward, his training philosophy was built on discipline and creativity. While other fighters relied heavily on brawling, Johnson studied technique. He swam to build endurance and strengthen his body without strain. He skipped rope endlessly to sharpen balance and footwork, creating the rhythm that later allowed him to glide around opponents. He hit the medicine ball and punching bags to perfect timing and precision. Road work was constant, but Johnson often added motor pacing, running behind moving vehicles to push his stamina beyond ordinary limits. His style inside the ring reflected these routines. The jab became his greatest tool, not only for offense but for controlling distance. He used his lead hand to parry blows, saving energy and frustrating rivals. When opponents lunged forward, Johnson stepped back and countered with crisp, accurate punches. Inside the clinch, he leaned and twisted, making opponents carry his weight while slowly wearing them down. His short uppercut punished anyone reckless enough to rush in. Every move was calculated, refined through hours of repetition. Psychological training was equally important. Johnson understood that a fight could be won in the mind before it was won in the ring. In sparring, he practiced talking to his partners, using words to distract while landing clean shots. In real bouts, he smiled and taunted, creating an image of control that unsettled his opponents. What looked like arrogance to the crowd was actually strategy. By staying calm under pressure, he made opponents doubt themselves and fall into mistakes. Much of this approach could be traced back to Choinski's early guidance. Johnson later credited him with showing the difference between fighting and boxing. Fighting was about exchanging blows. Boxing was about managing time, space, and opportunity. Johnson carried that lesson for the rest of his career, ensuring he was never drawn into battles of pure strength when he could win through skill. The facilities Johnson used were often simple. At the turn of the century, gyms lacked the advanced equipment of today. His tools were a rope, a ball, a heavy bag, the open road, and sometimes a swimming pool. Yet these limitations forced him to rely on consistency. He repeated drills until they became second nature. Hours of skipping rope honed his footwork, Endless bag work sharpened a jab that was both a measuring stick and a weapon. Even his unusual motor pacing runs gave him the endurance to outlast opponents larger and younger. Scarcity never discouraged him. Instead, it built resilience. While others trained in better-equipped camps, Johnson adapted and made the most of what he had. His success became proof that creativity and discipline could rival any advantage. He understood that greatness required not just tools, but the will to use them relentlessly. He also recognized the value of balance. Johnson trained hard, but he also knew when to rest and recover. Between sessions, he focused on keeping his body in peak condition with food, sleep, and controlled routines. This balance allowed him to maintain a steady rhythm in training camps and show up to fights with confidence. Ultimately, every victory in Johnson's career was rooted in these thousands of hours of preparation. From learning defense in a cell, to running behind cars, to sparring with calculated words, each moment of practice shaped the fighter he became. His style was born not from luxury, but from persistence. With limited resources, he created a system that built not only his body, but his mind. Jack Johnson was born on March 31, 1878 in Galveston, Texas, to parents who had endured bondage. He left school early to work the docks, hauling cargo and taking any job that kept food on the table. In his teens, he sometimes entered rough, winner-take-all melees staged for crowds. Crude beginnings that hardened his nerves but also showed him there had to be a smarter way to fight. As his reputation grew, so did the scrutiny. Johnson's rise unfolded in an era of heavy public pressure and sharp expectations, and matchmaking around him was often political as much as athletic. Critics argued over the opponents he selected once he became champion, and over rematches he did not grant to rugged contenders like Sam Langford and Joe Jeanette. Promoters, newspapers, and crowds fueled a sustained campaign to find someone, anyone, who could dethrone him. Living at the center of that whirlwind, Johnson learned to carry himself with poise and to treat the ring like a chessboard. Away from the ring, he cultivated a larger-than-life persona that fascinated the public. He loved fine clothes, fast cars, and good food, and he was as comfortable at the theater as he was at the gym. A favorite anecdote captures both his humor and his confidence. After being stopped for speeding and fined on the spot, Johnson reportedly handed the officer double the amount and said he'd be coming back the same way. Keep the change. He also tinkered with machines and, in 1922, received a U.S. patent for an adjustable wrench, evidence that his curiosity extended beyond the ropes. His private life was dramatic and often painful. In 1912, his first wife, Etta Duryea, died tragically, a loss that shadowed his greatest professional heights. Later that year, he married Lucille Cameron, a relationship that drew relentless tabloid attention and entangled him in a high-profile Mann Act case. He left the United States during the legal storm and spent years on the road, boxing exhibitions and making appearances across Europe and Latin America. In 1915, under the searing Havana sun, he lost the heavyweight crown to Jess Willard after a marathon 26 rounds, a result that ended his reign, but not his notoriety. Johnson eventually returned, served a sentence related to the Mann Act case, and built a second life on stages and in auditoriums. He lectured on the manly art of self-defense, sparred in exhibitions, and later supported national war bond drives during World War II, proving that his bond with the public outlasted his championship. In 1925, he married Irene Pinot, a steady presence in his later years. Friends remembered that he remained generous with time and advice, often giving pointers to young fighters who sought him out. He also published an autobiography, In the Ring and Out, 1927, telling his story in his own words and preserving the mindset that made him so difficult to rattle. On June 10, 1946, Johnson died in a car crash in North Carolina. Reports long claimed he had driven off after a dispute at a diner. Some historians question parts of that account, but all agree the end came suddenly on the open road he loved. Decades later, in 2018, he received a posthumous presidential pardon, an official acknowledgement that the legal battles which shadowed his career belonged to a different era. What remains is the portrait of a singular life, a dock worker who learned ring science in a jail cell, a showman who turned scarcity into style, a tinkerer who earned a patent, and a celebrity whose wit and will carried him far beyond boxing. Johnson's origins were modest, his final years restless, and his legend still growing. Jack Johnson's story is more than victories and titles. It is the journey of a man who proved that discipline, intelligence, and courage can transform obstacles into triumphs. His reign opened doors for future champions and showed that true greatness comes from perseverance and vision. His life reminds us to turn doubt into determination and to live boldly, no matter the challenges. Before we wrap up, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to join me in exploring more legendary boxing stories.